Picture this: Paris, 1976. A New York filmmaker with a $100,000 budget, a script based on George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, and the audacity to shoot an adult film like it was a Fellini production? Radley Metzger, working under the name Henry Paris, was about to create something nobody thought possible. The Opening of Misty Beethoven wasn't just another Golden Age release. It was 3 countries, operatic cinematography, Shakespearean dialogue, and a lead performance so captivating that critics would call it the Citizen Kane of adult cinema. And they weren't kidding. This is the story of the most ambitious adult film ever made. While everyone else in the industry was cranking out films in San Fernando Valley apartments for $5,000 and a weekend shoot, Radley Metzger was boarding planes to Europe with a briefcase full of cash and a vision that would have made most producers think he'd lost his mind. $100,000 in 1976 for an adult film. That's the equivalent of $500,000 today. And Metzger was spending it on location permits in Paris, Rome, and New York. Elaborate period costumes, classical set design, and the kind of production value you'd expect from a Hollywood studio, not a genre film shot under a pseudonym. The concept? Take Pygmalion, the same story that became My Fair Lady, and remake it as a sophisticated adult feature. A worldly sexologist discovers a naive woman and transforms her into the ultimate embodiment of sensual refinement. It's a love letter to classic theater wrapped in provocation, and somehow, impossibly, it works. Metzger wasn't interested in quick payoffs or cheap thrills. He wanted to prove adult cinema could be art, capital A art, the kind film schools would study decades later, and that's exactly what happened. Finding the right Misty Beethoven was crucial. The role demanded an actress who could believably transform from awkward, innocent, to confident, sophisticated, someone who could actually act, not just perform. Enter Constance Money. Money brought something rare to the screen, genuine vulnerability mixed with intelligence. She wasn't just going through the motions. In interviews years later, she described Metzger as obsessive, demanding take after take until the emotion felt real. "He treated us like actors in a real film," she said, because to him, that's exactly what we were. Her transformation across the film's runtime is genuinely compelling. You watch her character grow, change, discover herself. It's the kind of arc you'd see in a mainstream drama, not a genre piece shot for adult theaters. Playing opposite her was the incomparable Jamie Gillis as Seymour Love, the Henry Higgins figure. Gillis, already a legend by 1976, understood exactly what Metzger was doing. He leaned hard into the theatrical nature of the script, delivering Shaw-inspired dialogue with the gravity of a stage actor. The man quoted Shakespeare between scenes, for heaven's sake. The supporting cast, including Jacqueline Budin and Ross Kean, weren't just filling space. They had character names, motivations, actual arcs. Metzger rehearsed his actors, discussed their characters' psychology, treated them like collaborators. That respect radiates through every frame, elevating performances that could have been throwaway into something memorable. Here's where things get absolutely wild. Most directors would fake European sophistication with some potted plants and careful framing. Not Metzger. He packed up his entire production and actually flew to Paris. The French sequences were shot on location in genuine Parisian apartments, cafes, and streets. Metzger captured the architecture, the afternoon light filtering through centuries-old windows, the unmistakable texture of mid-70s Paris. From there, the crew moved to Rome, shooting against classical Italian backdrops and Renaissance aesthetics that simply couldn't be replicated on a soundstage. Finally, they returned to New York for urban sequences that grounded the fantasy. 3 countries, 3 distinct visual palettes, all in service of a story about transformation and sophistication. The cinematography was absurdly ambitious. Metzger himself operated the camera for many sequences, composing shots with geometric precision. Tracking shots glided through Parisian streets like something out of Truffaut. Static frames held on actors' faces during dialogue, trusting the performances to carry the moment. The visual language was borrowed from European art cinema, not the hasty pragmatism typical of adult productions. Every location was chosen for aesthetic impact. A grand Parisian apartment became the setting for Misty's education. Roman piazzas provided Baroque backdrops for elaborate sequences. Even mundane interiors were dressed with antique furniture, paintings, details that most directors would never bother with. The costumes weren't cheap lingerie or contemporary casual wear. Characters wore elegant, period-appropriate clothing that felt authentic to the film's refined atmosphere. Metzger understood that if audiences were going to take this seriously, everything had to feel intentional, considered, real. What made Radley Metzger different? Simple. The man genuinely loved cinema. Before directing adult films, he distributed European art cinema in America, bringing Fellini and Bergman to American audiences. His influences weren't other genre directors, they were the masters of world cinema. When he crossed into adult content, he refused to compromise. His films had actual plots, character development, visual coherence, things that were rapidly disappearing from the genre. Scripts were literate. Jake Barnes adapted Shaw's dialogue with wit and intelligence. Characters quoted Shakespeare, discussed philosophy, engaged in real conversations rather than just setups for the next scene. The editing was surgical. Transitions were motivated, pacing controlled, momentum maintained. The film builds to a genuine climax, both narratively and structurally. Compare this to typical adult films of the era, which felt like disconnected vignettes with zero regard for narrative flow. Even the music was custom composed, incorporating classical influences and sophisticated arrangements instead of generic funk. Every single element, from the opening frame to the final fade, served a larger artistic vision. Metzger's perfectionism extended to absurd lengths. Multiple takes for dialogue scenes, careful lighting setups that took hours, rehearsals before shooting. On a genre film in 1976, the man was either crazy or a genius, and history has proven it was the latter. When Misty Beethoven premiered in late 1976, it created a media buzz. Adult film critics hailed it as a landmark achievement. Mainstream critics who actually watched it couldn't help but acknowledge its technical sophistication. Word spread fast. This wasn't just another adult film, this was something different. The movie played in first-run theaters across major cities, often packed with curious audiences who'd heard the whispers. This was the adult film you could almost admit to seeing at a dinner party. The one with artistic pretensions that actually delivered on them. The phrase, "the Citizen Kane of adult cinema," became permanently attached, appearing in reviews, retrospectives, and academic discussions. It was the highest compliment and a convenient shorthand, though some argued it limited the film by positioning it as an exception rather than a possibility. Financially, Metzger's expensive approach meant tighter profit margins than typical low-budget productions. But the cultural impact was undeniable. Film scholars started paying attention. Academic papers referenced his work. The film appeared in university screenings and midnight movie circuits. It transcended its genre classification entirely. Critics who dismissed adult cinema as inherently artless had to contend with Misty Beethoven. Here was proof that talent, vision, and resources could create something genuinely cinematic, regardless of content. The film became Exhibit A in debates about art, commerce, and cultural boundaries. Today, the opening of Misty Beethoven is preserved, studied, and celebrated. Companies like Directorial have released restored versions on DVD and Blu-ray, recognizing its historical importance. Film schools occasionally screen it as an example of auteur filmmaking within commercial constraints. In an era when such ambition has essentially vanished from adult filmmaking, Misty Beethoven stands as a monument to what Golden Age cinema achieved when talent, resources, and vision aligned. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want more deep dives into Golden Age cinema's most ambitious productions, hit that subscribe button.